You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and tonight we are going to continue our Clone Wars saved run of shows with a look back on Clone Force 99, aka Bad Batch, as they are affectionately known. And joining me tonight, as always, is none other than the original Bad Batch clone member himself. Please welcome Jonesy to the show.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Good to see you again. Welcome.
Yeah. We're recording this one a little bit late. Some things got in the way here and there, but nonetheless, we're here, and we're going to jump into some news, and we've got, we had the Resistance trailer, so we'll talk about that, at least get some initial reactions in that as well. But before we do that, we've got some business we got to take care of. We did want to make mention that the Cantina Cast, along with The Basement, are now part of Earglue Media, which is the network that Mike Rondo has recently started. So those of you that have been following us in Discord or on social media, any of the social media pages, or even Mike's personal page, you know that he's made this announcement this week, I believe, earlier this week. So that's all official. We've got, again, the Cantina Cast is a flagship show for the network. We have the Basement, which is the Ready Player One podcast that I'm doing on the side there. And furthermore, he's got a new show coming out called Many Faces of Masters of the Universe, which is coming this fall. And Mike will be doing that. Mike will be the one hosting that. So that'll be doing a kind of retrospective look on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He's got all kinds of things planned. I think, Jonesy, you're going to head up that first episode or two. Is that right?
Yeah, I got volunteered to help out on the first couple of shows. So it should be exciting and revisit some of the toys and shows of our childhood, kind of a la The Basement a little bit, but a little more focused just on the He-Man and She-Ra universe. And we'll see where it takes us. There's a lot of new content. They rebooted He-Man back in the early 2000s, and now She-Ra is about to get her own Netflix show. So a lot of different directions can go. So pretty exciting new adventure there as well.
He asked me what my favorite He-Man character was, and I told him Dolph Lundgren. So the other thing, what's not going to change, though, is really the shows are going to be all the same. So we're going to continue to do Cantina Cast as we have been. The Basement will stay The Basement. We've added in this show. We've got a couple of other shows maybe here coming soon in the works, announcements. So I'll just kind of tease that up a little bit. But again, nothing's really changing in terms of this show or the format. So you'll continue to hear Jonesy and I coming to you every week with more Star Wars talk. On top of that, there have been some recent changes in Discord. So if you are a member of any one of our Discord channels, whether it be the Cantina Cast, The Basement, we now have a single Discord server for Earglue Media. And we are in the process of migrating users or asking users to come over to the one kind of parent umbrella Discord server, if you will. So what we've done is we've taken all the channels, all of the big hits, so to speak, from the channels in the Cantina Cast and from the Basement Discord servers. We've now rolled them all under this Earglue Media server Discord. And what we've done is right now, I think we have all the Patreon folks in there. They've been in there as a perk. They've gotten early access. And then what are we saying, 4 days from now, August 22nd? Is that right?
Well, we've actually largely opened it up to most everybody. So in our show notes for this episode, we will have the new Discord server in there and ready to roll. So any links you might see on some old episodes, go ahead and ignore those. And from here on out, you'll have the new one set up for you.
Yep. Sorry. And I've been out of commission the last couple of days, so I forgot we had made that change. So yeah, by the time this show airs, definitely will be available to you. And I missed out on all the fun this weekend. It looks like you guys had a blast in there.
It has been nothing short of exciting chaos and pandemonium with the level of activity that we've got. With just our not only our normal, really kind of core group, but as people come in, and it's just a lot of exciting things going on, and they're seeing some of the new stuff that that Mike's going to work on, and it's just people are all over the place having a great time, and it's all in one place now. So it'll settle down, and everyone will kind of settle into their spaces, and we'll go from there. But it's been a really great launch so far. So it's really exciting. So we'll hope people will come out and check it out.
All right. Well, enough of the business. Let's get on to the Star Wars talk. And first, we're going to hit up just real quick. Just a reminder, this is we're the 10th year anniversary of the Clone Wars movie. Now, I got to ask you, did you watch this movie when it came out, or I don't know where you were? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, my wife and I went to go see it in the theater, and I kind of remember first time we left it, we were not really sure where this show was going, and because it was kind of 4 episodes stitched together. It wasn't really a movie, so to speak, and so it was a little confusing to see it. I mean, but this was a lot of first, right? No, the Star Wars fanfare wasn't there, so you had a very different feel. The music was very different and different style. Of course, we had brand new characters with Ahsoka, and our kind of world got a little turned upside down. But yeah, I remember seeing this in the theater with Leslie, and we kind of left not really sure what to not to make of it. And of course, the show itself panned out, tenfold for us in the long run. But it was a very interesting thing. How about you?
Yeah, no, I caught this in the theater. Maybe not. And honestly, I didn't catch it the opening weekend or anything, and I don't recall why. There were some very good reasons as to why, and it was a couple weeks later after it had already been out. But yeah, this is it was very different. Again, it was all new. Now we look back and we're like, oh, it's just Clone Wars. But at the time where we were, at least with Star Wars fandom and what was available to us, this was you could kind of see the initial seeds that Lucas was trying to put in with the Clone Wars movie itself, right? Attack of the Clones.
Right.
And because there was just so much that was going on, we knew there was a lot going on, and this was really the start of something much larger. And I honestly, I got a sense from the movie that, okay, wow, there's really a lot that's good that could be told here. I did not have any kind of concept in terms of just how grand that was going to become. Now that we were 6-7 seasons down, we've had a number of other spin-off Clone War materials that came out of that, whether it be books and comics and everything else. It's just a vast amount of knowledge and stories that came from all of this. So, and I think we've all been better for it. I mean, there's just so much that the Clone Wars in itself is just its own entity, right? Apart from the movies and apart from the prequels, it's its own living thing, and it's a great living thing. Looking back now, reflectively, it's just been an awesome experience, and we're still getting more.
That's crazy.
It's still crazy.
Yeah,
that we're still we're talking about next year having even more content, and who would have thought that we would be doing the Cantina Cast, 4 or 5 episodes here.
Yeah, and it was so cool because it was this. and George Lucas and Filoni had this. Lucas, I guess, really positioned this, but to fill in all those stories, and I think we talked about it previously, the movies now have become this broad brush, right? These broader strokes, and the Clone Wars is filling in all the details, and it's so entwined now with the, it's canon, of course, but when we think about Star Wars, we think as much about the Clone Wars, if you've seen them, as you do the movies, especially in the prequel era, and they've just come synonymous. And we've spoken about this a handful of times before. The voice actors have now become the standard that we set the characters for, and the actors that play them. We kind of thought it was, Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Because he's played it the longest. Well, James Arnold Taylor has really become Obi-Wan Kenobi for a lot of kids that grew up with it, and even a lot of folks our age that, and Matt Lanter's Anakin is
Matt Lanter.
Yeah, he's really considered the gold standard now. For the way that he portrayed that character, and it really fit the character and gave him a little more maturity to it over time. Of course, he had tons of episodes to do that too. So that's nothing against Hayden Christensen, but yeah, these have really become the standard of the characters, and it's really been an amazing journey watching that, and we'll see what these last 12 do for us.
And then I guess the other thing, the other big news that we had, I think on Thursday, we got the trailer for Resistance. So that premieres October 7th on, I believe, Disney XD. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's actually the Disney Channel. Yeah.
Is it Disney Channel?
Right.
Yeah. Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, yeah. So it's actually been on the Disney Channel, and it dropped Thursday or Friday. I can't remember which. And it kind of came out of nowhere because I'd posed the question just a couple of days ago. I said, I remember this. Yeah. We're like 45-ish days out. and we have nothing. And so there started to be rumors that it was being pushed back and this was not a good sign and so on and so forth. And then bam, here it is. We get a minute, more of a teaser trailer, I think you were calling it, and which I agree with. And we finally got our first, flavor of it. And the animation that, or the design that we've seen some sneak peeks of, and the Resistance logo and this kind of bright, vibrant world is a reality. I mean, I think this looks great. I mean, what were your first impressions of the art?
Yeah, well, so I've only seen this once, and I literally saw this. We were recording this on the 18th on a late Saturday night.
He was in the middle of the country, like country folks, like pine trees and stuff. So it's excusable.
I was fighting rattlesnakes and scorpions all weekend. But yeah, so I haven't really had a chance. I've only watched it one time, and this is just my initial first impression. I really like the animation, and I know when a lot of the supporters were it was just blowing up and people were talking about it. I had asked whether or not it looked I could only pull up images because of my reception out there. So I was able to, I pulled up 4 images. It took about like 30 minutes to look at them, but it reminded me of like the Tron, the animation cartoon that came out on Disney XD a few years back. And I don't know that it looks exactly like that, but for me, it does kind of still have that same spirit. It looks like it's cell shaded. We talked about that. I think at one point that was probably a high possibility that that's what we would get. And we were kind of basing that off that one, weird screenshot that we had at one of the, I forget where they showed that. But based on that, we kind of made some conclusions that was going to be it. And then in terms of the animation style, it's not exactly anime. And it's not exactly, traditional US animation. It's somewhere kind of in between, right. I would say. I think you got moments of, oh yeah, it kind of does look like anime. But the character faces, I think that's usually one of the distinguishing factors between anime versus,
right.
Whatever we call traditional US cartooning or cartoons. It looks like it's more leaning that way. But the colors look awesome. I thought the animation looks great. The way they clipped that first intro, the very beginning of it's very like Han Solo teaser. It was very fast, snappy. I heard like a little clicking noise, and I think I remember that from the Han Solo trailers and teasers. So I don't know if they were kind of going for that same vibe.
Right.
But it was cool. I mean, it was more of a teaser, I think, than anything else. Because apart from the fact that I know, confirmed now, I've seen Poe Dameron and BB-8 and that sort of thing, I don't really have a great sense in terms of still, who the main character is, what's his story, what's his purpose, what's he trying to do. I've got very, very little on it, but that's okay. I mean, this is, still kind of early on, but I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
Typically with Disney trailers or teasers, to me, it seems like we're really only seeing the first couple of episodes with the clips that we're getting. And that's pretty standard fare for Disney Channel shows in general. And if you go back and look at some of your favorite shows and what they share with you early on, that's pretty much all they give you, including what you get in the pre-roll when they do the beginning credits and the intro music and all that stuff for a show. A lot of that usually of these really beginning shows, you just get a lot of early stuff if they do a collage of images and whatnot. So to me, it seems like we're not really seeing a whole lot, but you're right. The animation, man, and the vibrant colors are great. There's a lot of jokes and lightheartedness in the show, which suggests to me that we're going to see something closer to where Clone Wars and Rebels were strayed a little bit closer. I think the TV-14, I think, is the rating. My guess is this is probably going to stray a little bit closer to Y7 Fantasy Violence, so Y7 FV a little bit. So not as intense, maybe, but still going to have those action sequences, and you're still going to have this fantasy violence aspect to it, but not as serious and dark at times. And when we saw that, as we were walking through some of the Asajj Ventress episodes, some of those episodes were really, really, really dark, and a little disturbing at times, right? And so I don't think we're gonna get that from this show, and I think that's okay. I mean, they're trying to bring it, and this is on Disney Channel, not on Disney XD,
right?
And so you have to kind of set your expectations accordingly. I'm not getting an impression it's going to be as campy as like a Freemakers is. So, so it's kind of somewhere in between, right? But I mean, you're going to have some names you like. There are a lot of great actors in this too, voice actors and actors alike. And one of my favorites, of course, Donald Faison, but there's a handful of other ones that we all know that are great. And they're going to do a great job. And we're already getting some little teasers of things that's like, okay, what does this do? So we've seen the Journeyman Protector flag for the Mandalore in the background of one scene. So it's like, okay, where does that fit in? And we've seen, we have a gold stormtrooper. And so with a blue blaster, right? Laser blaster. So it's like, okay, well, what's that about? Is speculation whether that's a precursor of Phasma, which I'm not sure I'm on board. I don't think that's the case, because in the novel, we pretty much saw her going straight from First Order, pretty much straight to crafting her armor out of the ship. But still something way different. We thought it was maybe lighting at one point, like a fire or something. But
that's all I took. I mean, again, I've only seen it once, but they just looked like there was.
I was slowing down with like screenshots and everything, and it looks gold. I mean, it's like gold member gold.
All right, I'll have to go back and look at that.
Yeah. So, but interesting things on the hull of the ship that looks like there's a little Millennium Falcon on it, some little things like that, which are really neat. And we pick apart these things like crazy, but. So once you've seen another couple dozen times, Albert, we'll come back and do another more thorough review of this, perhaps.
Yeah, we will.
But it looks fun. Is it going to be for everybody? No, but that's all right too. And hopefully the kids get into it and will inspire another generation of Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge hit here at the house. I can tell you that. So we are all in on this one as well.
It's going to be action packed. I mean, we're seeing some ships too that we haven't, that were in Legends, and now it looks like they're going to bring them into the canon world. So that's always fun too, right? So we continue to bring more Legend stuff in. Okay,
well, let's do this. I guess at this point, we'll go right into the main show, which we talked about. So we're going to be covering The Bad Batch, or Clone Force 99. And again, these are episodes that are available out there. So if anybody wants to go and watch them, you can. I think they're still on the StarWars.com website. If you can dig them out of there, it's not as easy to get to those. They're available on YouTube. Pretty much everyone. There's several links that have them on.
Yeah, if you do them on StarWars.com, if you go to videos and you scroll down to the Clone Wars area, you should be able to find them. And they are grouped together, which is nice. So you'll be able to find them, and then I think they're either called Clone Force 99 or Bad Batch, one of the two.
And so these were unfinished episodes. There was a total of, was it 4? Yeah, sorry, 4 of them. And these were supposed to come out before Lost Missions, which eventually became season 6. But really, it's 4 episodes. Bad Batch is the first one. A Distant Echo is number 2. On the Wings of Karadak is number 3, and then Unfinished Business kind of wraps up that little series. So we're going to try to talk about. We're going to try to focus on the characters, but this may be a little bit of a review show only because this is new content, and I want to make sure and kind of highlight a couple things. But we're not going to do a full analysis of every single thing that happens in each episode, but just kind of touch on the high points and maybe talk a little bit at the end about where this could have gone and why some of the decisions that we saw were made in that. So now, you caught that whole video. I remember seeing it back in 2015 when it was released. These were originally shown, and if you go out there, first I should disclaimer, they're pretty rough. They're still rough. They've got all the voice acting in them. They have all of the special effects, and the only thing that's really not there is that they've all been blocked, but they don't have all their full animations. So they're pretty rough in terms of how they look. But otherwise, if you were to just close your eyes, it's a full on episode.
Right.
And these were originally shown at the Clone Wars panel at Celebration Anaheim in 2015. And I know you've had a chance to kind of recently watch some of that footage because all that's available too. But anything that stood out from you prior to going into these episodes that maybe was talked about either by Dave Filoni or some of the writers here? Yeah,
you can go see the video on StarWars.com. They've actually just got the panel on there as well. I highly recommend it. It was a really fun conversation, especially listening to the panel that we just heard here in the last few weeks, and then going back and revisiting that one of where they were at, of, not being able to finish the story, and they were trying to give back to the fans. And we actually hear someone say, save the Clone Wars and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting circle that we've made here. But they've had this idea of the Bad Batch, or this set of clones that, were genetically different than the rest. And so Brett Friedman was one of the main catalysts behind this. And there was a funny story in there of he would basically just keep bugging Dave Filoni all the time, all these random events. They'd be talking in the story meetings, and then he'd say, and this is where the Bad Batch shows up. And Filoni was just losing his mind that it just kept coming up and kept coming up and kept coming up. because it just didn't make sense for them to interject. No one knows who they are. You can't just throw them in. And so they finally had this opportunity to go back and integrate them in and have their own story arc, if you will. Or they didn't really have an arc, but you have something that they can actually come in and be unique to and participate in. And so it was great. And so they were really disappointing because, like I said, the lighting's not there. The final rendering's not there. You can't see their mouths don't move, nothing like that. The animation's
sometimes
really
their legs don't move.
Yeah, they kind of glide
float across the screen.
Yeah, it's like one of those metallic magnetic football games,
Exactly.
That's what it looks like half the time. So it's rough to watch, but you're right. The voice acting is all there. It was a very different type of feel, but it was just interesting hearing kind of what went into it. George Lucas and Brent wanted this Dirty Dozen meets Saving Private Ryan type of feel to it. And they really kind of nailed it. It really did get that type of atmosphere with these characters, and D. Bradley Baker, of course, did all of them. And we're gonna talk about each of the characters. But one of the things that was interesting, and we can hear in his voice acting with the clones in general, is that each one of them has something unique about them.
Yeah, they
all sound alike, but there is something unique to where when you hear them speak, and we saw this in the Clone Wars Save trailer, where the lines are memorable, but at the same time, you can almost, if you're really familiar with the episodes, which clone was talking, even though it's the same actor doing it all. Which is really a testament to his skill. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean he really gets to kind of spread his wings, so to speak, in a lot of the voice acting here.
Yeah.
And if you think about it collectively, holistically, by the end of the series, all the different clones that he's done, from 99 to Echo and
insane.
Fives and everybody else. I mean, there's just so many that we wouldn't have known. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier. When the movie came out, you got a sense that there was a sense of breadth in terms of the story and the characters. But retrospectively looking back, it's just so much bigger. And it was thanks to people like D. Bradley Baker, who was able to kind of give a very unique twist to a lot of these different characters. And again, we got that same thing here with the Bad Batch characters themselves, and even more so because they were not stereotypical clones. They had, and we'll talk about this in a second, but very different in a lot of different ways. And no question that's always come up is whether or not these guys were, or whether these episodes. So these episodes being like the Bad Batch series, we're going to talk about Crisis on Utapau a little bit later, but whether or not these were canon. And I've seen, and you may have the most recent, but my understanding was always that even though, yes, they'd already written the scripts and they had already been approved by either Dave Filoni and or George Lucas, and they had already done the voice acting and they'd already done rough cuts, and they were at that point where they were just about to get released, but never did. They were not considered canon. And is that still the case today? Are we looking at these now and saying, yes, they are? Or are we looking at these and saying, maybe, but things could always change?
Well, come next year, we'll probably have a very different opinion and take on it with whatever they decide to release. I have a theory there
too. We'll get to later.
Yeah. So what they said during the panel in 2015, because they did Q&A, and someone came up and asked that question if this was considered canon, and Filoni came out and said, from a certain point of view, they're semi-canon or legend canon. So he kind of answered without saying.
Oh, that's confusing.
You're right. Now, he did frame that up a little bit, which I think it's going to give us more of an idea of a direction. So the stories did come from George Lucas and the story team, right? So Pablo Hidalgo and all of them. And so when you talk to those groups, at least back in 2015, they for the most part considered it canon. I mean, they wrote these stories. There's no reason for them not to be. They don't impact the overall story too much to where it completely skews a character development for Anakin or for Obi-Wan, or it puts them in a place they can't be. It doesn't do any of those things. And so there's no reason for it not to be. And so now we're going to see, okay, just how much are they going to carry forward into the new episodes to see and actually formally canonize it or not. But it was an interesting question because at the time they didn't know, like you brought up Crisis on Utapau, they wouldn't talk about anything beyond what they showed there. And of course, Crisis on Utapau ended up coming to the Blu-ray, I believe. And I think that was before the Blu-rays were announced in the box set, that those, if I remember right, it's been a while. So they weren't sure they were going to release anything else. So this batch specifically, we've got insight in from Filoni, but we don't have anything for the rest of them.
Well, let's do this. We'll talk about Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch themselves, and then we'll kind of talk about each one of them. There's 4 in total, and then we'll get into the episodes. But starting with the name, Clone Force 99, I guess their alias was Bad Batch.
Right.
And they are basically a group of commandos clone commandos. They're named after Clone Trooper 99. So we saw him. Oh, now I'm going to draw a blank on the episode, but
Cadets
he's
or something like that.
Yeah, I think he was in that one. I think he came back a little bit later.
ARC Trooper, yeah.
ARC Trooper, yep. And so he was the older clone that had the kind of like the sagging face, and but they were named after him. And of course, he dies.
Defective, right? In quotes there.
Yeah, defective. Yeah. That's right. But these guys they're the commandos. They're the elite force, the Delta Force almost. They don't report to anybody, but we know from early on when they're first introduced in Bad Batch that they have reported to Commander Cody from time to time doing these kind of covert, high risk, espionage type missions. And this is really our first exposure. And here we are, 5 years into Clone Wars, and we're led to believe that they've been doing all kinds of stuff prior to that. They've been genetically altered. They've got special abilities. We talked about their unique voices. They sound, you can hear the clone in them, but they're very different in a lot of ways. But I want to focus on the commandos because I know this is right up your alley. I know you're a big fan of the clone commandos and stuff, but we had like Delta Squad with like Boss and Fixer and those guys. Right. And then to some extent we had Gregor's group. I think was the Foxtrot group, but this is another group of the commandos. So I know you hadn't seen these prior to us going into the show, but were you pretty excited about this? And does it align with, I guess, your vision of the clone commandos, whether it be what we saw in the Clone Wars or the video game or the books or anything else?
Yeah, this is about as close as we've got to anything on screen for those. And yeah, it's a good parallel to draw because they have those same, you have these unique skill sets. I think we've seen this with the regular clone troopers and the commanders as well. We've seen them excel in certain areas, but not to this extreme. And I think the Clone Commandos and the Republic Commando series is a good comparison in that regard because you have a certain task that you are good at, and that's pretty much what you do all the time, and that's your contribution to the group. And so I was really excited to see that because I had never watched these before we decided to start watching this episode. I don't get into unfinished artwork and animation in particular. It's just distracting, and so. But when I saw it and kind of saw how they were working, I was like, oh yeah, that is kind of cool. This does remind me, and I'm a huge proponent of trying to get, Republic Commando content canonized and get it on screen in particular. I don't want video games. I don't want more books. I want to see it on screen. And this is about as close as we got to it.
Now, the Bad Batch or Clone Force 99 is led by Hunter. And so Hunter he's if you watch the show, he's the one that's got the headband on. He's almost like a Rambo kind of character, or Paul from Ikari Warriors, if you're into that video game.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yep.
But his inspiration was Billy from Predator, which I always thought was interesting.
It's spot on. I mean, when you see him, you're like, oh yeah, where's Arnold?
Yeah, where's Arnold? Well, he's maybe a little bit later. He's probably the other guy
covered in mud. Yeah.
So what are Hunter's special abilities? What does he do there?
Yeah. So he's got these enhanced senses that, especially with a strong olfactory sense. So that sense of smell, and he can also sense strong electromagnetic emissions. And I guess he's so sensitive. He can actually sense them planet wide, which is pretty insane. And as you watch the episode, you can see that he definitely has a affinity for using the vibroblade. He likes getting up in the melee hand-to-hand combat, which is really cool because we don't, aside from Jedi, we rarely see the clones do this with a weapon in particular. And then of course he's also got the dual hand pistols as well, much like Rex does. But the scenes he was always getting up in there and wanting to slice a droid's head and throw in knives. So it was really cool to see that type of element rather than just, the rank and file.
Yeah. And he's a unique leader. We'll get to that when we get to the episodes themselves, but he's a little bit more reserved, I guess. He's a wild card, and because he's genetically enhanced and he's leading this ragtag group of commandos. But he is a little bit different in terms of he's probably the more likable of it. Well, Tech is pretty likable too, I guess. But
he's actually quiet for a leader. He
exactly.
Everyone kind of has their own, personality, and he kind of lets that fly. He's all right with that. So very different type of leader than we've seen with the regular troopers.
Yeah, he's not like a Rex or a Cody or some of those guys.
Right. And we see that rub too with Rex later on too. Like they don't adhere to the normal protocol.
And then next up we got Crosshair. So Crosshair is kind of like your marksman. I think his inspiration was Clint Eastwood. I remember that. Yep. And then they were I guess kind of going for a clone version of Cad Bane to some extent. Yep. So he's an expert sharpshooter. I don't even remember what they said, how many clicks away he could fire or shoot someone from, but it was an insane number that you're like, how's that even possible?
Right. Yeah.
But this guy, he's got like no sense of humor. He's super cynical. He's kind of a jerk face through most of these episodes. He has a general dislike for what he calls regs. And they explain it in one of the episodes that regs is regular trooper, regular clones. Yep. So that would be all the clones that we know of. So he's almost got kind of turning his nose down or turning it up, I guess, to them to some extent. And he had this thing in 2 of the episodes, he falls asleep and while they're heading to a mission, and it reminded me a lot of Hicks from the Aliens movie.
Right.
I don't know if you remember that character. It was like, can somebody wake up Hicks? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if they drew the inspiration from that, but I just thought it was weird that this guy was like dozing off, mid battle on the way to somewhere else.
The other thing that he reminded me of, so he has he's tall and has this kind of long face, and he reminded me of, remember the MTV show Eon Flux, right? The cartoon.
Oh yeah.
And whoever Eon's, nemesis was / love interest. And he reminded me a lot of him for some reason. Just maybe more just the look of him or anything like that. But it was just weird. I kept thinking of him. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, no, I don't remember his name either. But I definitely get where you're going with that. And then Crosshair and Wrecker were always in this constant competition about who could kill the most drones. And when I saw it pulled me back to like Lord of the Rings, where you had like Legolas and Gimli in Lord of the Rings, where they were constantly competing with who had the most number of orc kills, and they were at one point counting them off. They had a very similar moment in one of the episodes as well. So just more, I guess, pop culture parallels there. And then we've got Tech. So Tech he was kind of like a catch-all. Like he was the best, like he was a scientist, he was a splicer, he's the engineer, he could decrypt languages, he was a translator. I don't even know what I'm missing, but anything that's
super chatty.
It was just real talkative. And he was actually, pretty nice. He wasn't kind of a jerk or a raging lunatic like, Wrecker we'll talk about here in a second.
He was definitely the most likable of the clones, yeah.
Yeah. And then he had a thing for recordings. He had this kind of wrist computer thing and was always recording sounds and conversations, which when they mention that, you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. But then it becomes a plot element a little bit later in one of the episodes as well. So yeah, he was kind of a neat character. And again, his abilities really are just super smart. He seemed to know everything and very talkative about everything, almost like a C-3PO in some way.
And his armor's design was actually really cool too. The helmet with the little snap down display and, like you said, the wrist computer. So it was actually one of the more interesting things they did with the armor.
And then finally, I think we get as close as we can to the Hulk in Wrecker, who is this one-eyed. Well, I don't know if we can talk about that. I don't ever remember them referencing the fact that he only had one eye or anything else, but it looked like he only had one eye. I think one was like whited out for some reason. But he was like this hulking mass that had superhuman strength and was loud. He was brash. He was more of a, going in, guns blazing, we'll figure it out later kind of thing. And he was always trying to get in there and blow stuff up, which becomes this kind of running gag through the episodes. Right. But then on top of all that, he's afraid of heights.
It's always
which
something.
I thought was weird. Yeah. So, and he's really interesting because I don't know of another character, I guess, in the Clone Wars or even in Star Wars that we've had like this, that was this menacing or this strong or destructive in any way. Right. I couldn't think of any other ones that we'd seen before, at least not in canon.
Well, and D. Baker had the most fun with him because he did all these like, oh yeah, and crazy things like that, where he just shouted out randomly. And D. Baker thought, he's like, for sure this stuff's going to get caught. And so as they watched it at Celebration, he was just tickled pink because they left most of it in. And it was a little over the top at times because he was just overly enthusiastic about anything demolition wise or just going in guns blazing. But he was also the one with the closest to the Republic Commando type of gear. He had more of the hulking armor, and he had the awesome DC-17, like the amazing, the guns that you see on the cover of the book and the cover of the video game, which I thought was an awesome throwback, and that was totally intentional. Yeah, and it was just great because he had the look of the Republic Commandos through and through.
All right, so let's talk about Bad Batch, the first of the 4 episodes. And do you mind just kind of giving us the elevator speech, maybe a high-level recap of what's going on, at least in this episode, and to some extent the overarching story arc?
Yeah, sure. The Bad Batch episode was really mostly a setup episode. So the Republic is getting beaten pretty regularly on the planet of Anaxis, and Rex is starting to speculate that it's due to this algorithm that he had that he was using to calculate enemy forces, and so they could respond and beat them soundly. So he brings it up that there's only 2 or 3 people who know about the algorithm at all, and Echo was one of the clones who knew. And of course, Echo was presumed dead back in season 3, and so they decide to start tracking the signal, and they bring in the Bad Batch because they need a group of irregular skills, I think was the general idea in order to do this. And so they start tracking the signal back to, and what's his name? Tech actually starts to manipulate the sound and accidentally recorded it. And that's where Rex starts to recognize it. And so Cody had called them in to do that. And they start to say, okay, where's it coming from? And off to Skako Minor, I think is what's called.
Yeah, Skako Minor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like from the beginning when they're first introduced, they have this like low flying, kind of like a Top Gun Maverick, right? They come in real low and they get everybody's attention. So from the get-go, you get a sense that, they're bad boys. And even in their very first like battle, or in all the battles, really, they are like the poster group for the best defense is a good offense.
Right.
Like they're not really worried so much about tactics or defense. It's usually let Wrecker go in first, or they've got some other offensive minded type tactic in mind there before they even think about doing anything else. So it's very different, I guess, in the way they approach those. There's a lot of good moments in this episode too, I thought, where there's one thing that just stood out, and it's really not about the Bad Batch. There's a moment in this episode where there's those 2 clankers and they're sitting there talking, and one looks at the other one and goes, "Do you know what's going on?" The other one says, "I don't know. It must be some kind of drill."
Yeah.
Which is like right out of A New Hope with the stormtroopers. So again, that's got to be purposeful. But again, sorry, it doesn't stick. It's not part of the Bad Batch, but they threw that in there, and I just couldn't help but jump on all over it.
But you're right. You see the admiration, or they're almost like myths or legends to the rest of the Grand Army of the Republic. Most people don't even think that they're real, or they are, and then they get this almost instantaneous rub between them, where they start to offend them when they call them regs, and they're like, well, they'll take you down. And these other guys are like, no, you're not. You don't hold a candle to us.
There's a nice moment in here as well, I think, where Rex is kind of showing some flexibility. And I want to come back to Rex in just a second, because there's something that bothers me, and I want to get your thoughts on it. But there's a moment in here where Rex is, he shows his leadership a lot in this episode, in all of these episodes. And there's a moment where he adopts their methodology of attacking first, asking questions later. And I thought that was really cool, because it just shows his flexibility as a leader. Right. He's not rigid. He's not going to always stick to the book. He sees how tactically advantage. If it suits the tactics, he's going to adopt it, which is really cool. And so and I think we really get a sense of respect that starts from that moment in this episode with Hunter and Rex, because later on they continue to work together, and so much that at one point and I think it's in the next episode, Hunter says, he looks to Rex and says, "Hey, you tell me, right?
Right.
You're the captain. You tell me what we need to do. So it's a really cool moment.
It was kind of a good
that kind of
flashback. It reminded me of the early seasons with Rex and Ahsoka as well. It had that same kind of flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, a little different dynamic, but it still gave me that same kind of vibe that they had, right? Where they had this developing respect. I'm going to let you be yourself a little bit, but I'm going to keep you on that leash. But, really, I mean, they had more of a contentious relationship in this one, less so than kind of the juvenileness of Ahsoka at the time. But you're right, though. It was cool to see the relationship. By the time they get to the end of it, they really are becoming actually a pretty good unit.
Yeah, no, they have some moments in there where they kind of shine. Just the dynamic of the clones and how seasoned they are just from their everyday war, efforts. And then you've got these guys coming in. When you put them together, it's kind of a cool little force that they've created. There's another moment here where they're attacking the cyber center, and which I thought was awesome. Like the camera, even though it's really blocky, and this is towards the end of it when they get in there and they, detect the signal and translate it and all that. There's the camera work that goes into this. It was almost kind of like a one shot running camera type effect. And that's where you were talking earlier with the vibro blades. They were like flipping around and you see them smashing these different droids and they cut right over. And the camera never cuts. It's just one long continuous shot.
Right.
Which I thought was really neat because I don't know that we really have a whole lot of that in the Clone Wars, at least not that I recall. But then, so here's what I was talking about earlier. So we talked about Cody, and we said that the Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch, had always worked with Cody in the past. And Cody's set up in the very beginning of this episode. He's kind of like the connector here, and how they get them over to help them with this mission. And almost within the first, I guess 30 minutes or half of the episode, right, he's taken out and he's unconscious. He's hurt, and they're kind of carrying him. And he doesn't really even come back anymore through this in any of the 4 episodes. He's just out of commission at this point. But I almost got the sense that these 4 episodes are about Bad Batch, but it really gives Rex an opportunity to kind of shine here and take command of all of this. And I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but I just thought it was odd that Cody was kind of, again, that little missing link between these groups, and then he suddenly disappears. So do you think that was intentional?
I think
to shine a light on Rex and his abilities, or was there something else that we just didn't see because the series never played out the way it was supposed to?
No, I think you're right. And the other thing I think it allowed to show the relationship between Rex and Echo, and which I think may have been more of the in-game idea behind it. But you're right. It really gave Rex some opportunity to shine. I mean, he's had a lot of opportunity on his own anyway, but at the same time, with this different dynamic within the clone ranks themselves, and again, when you finally get him and Echo together, those tend to be the best moments of all these episodes. Really, is anything where they're interacting and you get this, Echo, we're going to get to here in a minute. I don't want to get too much away, but anytime they get together, it really gives them a moment to shine, and Bad Batch just kind of becomes the vehicle to keep all of that moving.
Well, let's get into that one now. So, A Distant Echo, do you want to give us a quick recap on what that episode does there?
Right. So they tracked it to the tower, right? And our old friend Wat Tambor from the Techno Union shows up. So he's escaped prison, come to find out. And he has been keeping, again, this is going to be really condensed, guys, and a lot of spoilers. We're not going to get into all the setup on it, but basically he's been keeping Echo in stasis. So Echo is alive. Now, they've replaced most of his limbs. They've hooked him into computers, and they're even mining his mind. So he's hooked up all of this stuff. So the Techno Union has been setting themselves as neutral in the whole war. But in reality, and of course we've seen this because we know they're working with Count Dooku, but Tambor has been supplying data to Admiral Trench and the CIS and the Separatists, right? And so this is the scenario where the team is looking for Echo, and then they actually finally find him in the chamber. And then we see him in this. He's emaciated. I mean, I kind of thought he was dead. I thought he was like zombie type of mode when we actually see him.
Yeah.
Right. But one of the cool things about this episode, the opening sequence is and this is why I started thinking that what we're going to get for season 7 that's coming next year might just be finishing some of these episodes. That opening sequence is verbatim what we saw in the trailer. Did you?
Yep.
You saw that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It
starts
is
with
the opening sequence.
Yeah, the shuttle flies over, goes into the hangar,
Goes under the walker,
under the walker, right?
The other ship, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yep. And the only thing I think to get really technical here, there was like Obi-Wan, or no, I'm sorry,
they were on different
Anakin
sides.
and Hunter. Yeah, they were flipped.
Yeah.
But apart from that, and then with the trailer for the new episodes, the camera kind of finally goes behind them, and that gives us the shot where they're walking out and outside of the hangar, and they look up and they see all the destroyers up there.
Right.
That's a little different, obviously, right? But in terms, like, that whole thing is one for one. They just I don't know if they recreated it for the sake of this trailer, but it got me thinking, like, okay, maybe this is where this new season starts. Maybe they give us all 4 of these episodes because this becomes a centerpiece or a pivotal piece for the rest of the season. Maybe there's things that are seeds that they're laying in here. Who knows? Maybe in that, maybe the tides were turned on the what's the final battle now? The Mandalore battle.
Siege Mandalore, yep.
Yeah, so maybe Bad Batch is a part of that, and we've never known that until now. But I don't know. We won't get into that. We could do a whole show on that.
Yeah, but people loved Fives and Echoes so much that it would just make sense for them to work this story arc, even if it's a little bit tweaked, in order to bring Echo back and have him back in the fold, right? I mean, God, I don't know anybody that doesn't like Echo.
Yeah, I know. I was extremely surprised when they first mentioned it, and you think, okay, there's a possibility he's alive, and then you start thinking, much like one of the characters, and I forget who it was now, that maybe this guy isn't really a good guy. Maybe he's a bad guy. Him being Echo, and then it's again, we're going to spoil all this, but later on when he finally comes around, and especially at the very end when you're like, holy crap, Echo's back. It's been 2-3 years for a character that we loved, and now he's very different. But he was back at that point, so it was pretty exciting stuff at the time when it was shown. At least for me, I guess, as an Echo fan.
Well, yeah, let's talk. Let's maybe explore the Echo part there. So this was again, we keep talking about Rex, and this is an episode where for Rex we have to see him. We see some emotion from Rex because Crosshair throws it out there. So the Bad Batch, they just kind of cut to the chase, right? And so.
Yeah, they got like no filter.
Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so, right? They go in, they do their thing, they get out. So Crosshair suggests that, Echo is a traitor, and Rex like loses it on him. I mean, he starts going after him, and Anakin's actually the one to defuse this fight, which is a little ironic.
Yeah, of all people.
Right. But, and Anakin and Rex have to have this conversation. Rex calms down, but Anakin says, look, we have to make sure that we understand the reality of it. He might be lost to us. We're going to do everything we can for him, but we just have to, we have to accept that it's possible because we've seen it before. It's possible that something's happened. And so Rex, he said, okay, I get that. But if someone has to do it, he wants to be the one to do it. Right. I mean,
yeah.
Typical. I mean, we would expect that from Rex, right? He would be the one to take his brother down if he had to.
Yeah, and it's funny too because this whole idea that they were going to go do this rescue mission didn't. There's a moment in there that's kind of cool that when Obi-Wan comes out and he's like, "Let me guess, this was your idea," and he's talking to Anakin, and Anakin's like, "No, this is not my idea at all.
Change.
It's Rex's idea." Yeah, for the change, right? But yeah, this whole idea was Rex's change, and so he's probably that relationship was driving a lot of that. But he convinces Obi-Wan to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to what was going on. Obi-Wan just kind of knows it's going to happen. I think he mentions that the council had already said no, that they weren't supposed to do this, and they went ahead and did it anyways. So we get another side there, another dynamic of Rex in that decision. I do want to talk about a funny moment though, because
this is great.
This is So there's a moment in there where they're going to board the Havoc Marauder, which is their ship that the Bad Batch flies around in. And they've got nose art on the ship itself. So nose art being, a lot of in like the World War II, the bombers and some of the planes, the fighter planes, they would do this nose art with these pinup type girls. And there's a moment where they're all kind of loading on there, and they look up, and it's a picture of Senator Amidala, and she's like in this like suggestive pose,
showing a little leg, I think. Yeah,
yeah. And there's some Aurebesh that says "Good to be bad." That's what it says over it. And then Wrecker's got this super creepy moment where he's like, yeah, she can negotiate with me anytime. And then Anakin, you can see it on his, well, you can't really
He
see it on
clenches
his
his
face.
fist, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's like, I can't remember what he says. Something like, that's not staying up there or whatever.
Right.
But that's a great little moment there. But I got to ask you something that's kind of somewhat related with the clones. Like, this isn't the first time. I can think of at least one, maybe two other episodes where we get the sense that they have maybe a liking for the female body, for lack of a better term. But why would they not have driven out like their sex drives or the appreciation for art or any of the stuff that makes them human? And I'm answering my question myself here, but it's just interesting that if they're driving these, if they were producing the Caminos were producing these folks, the clones, to be the superior type warriors, they wouldn't just drive a lot of that stuff that gets in the way of them out of them. But any thoughts?
Well, we don't see a lot of it though, right? So if we look at it from a percentage type of thing, this is pretty rare, and this is a very exceptional group. And the only we saw it in the Republic Commando novels, but that was more extended exposure to some of those environments of where they would actually have it. So I kind of see it the other way. I imagine they probably drove out most of it, but there are certain, I don't know, quote unquote bugs in the system where some of those things still come out more biologically. But again, there's not a lot of opportunity for them. I mean, they're just in war all the time. That's all they've known. That's all they've trained with. So I don't know that they probably eliminated most of those urges, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, these guys don't have any of that stuff because they were specifically genetically mutated in order to do different things already. So their code is already, not the standard, if you will.
There was some other little cool moments in this episode. There was one moment where Wrecker's like pumping iron with a gonk droid. He's like literally holding a gonk droid and like lifting him as weights. We got to see the D-Wing battle droids.
Yeah.
Which
very different.
They still looked a little, very different. There was moments in there where I couldn't even make out like where's their head at.
Yeah. That's where the animation was difficult to follow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But these are droids that like battle droids that could fly. Which became kind of another plot element. Or at least they needed to be able to fly in order for certain things to happen in this episode, but we're not going to talk about. And then Wat Tambor, which is like next to Maz, he's like right there. If you ever put them in an episode, I think I just power it off. I'm not even watching it, but because he's so freaking sarcastic, you can't ever tell like if whether he's being sarcastic, whether he's a lie. He's just got a really crappy attitude.
He's not overly interesting either to listen to. So.
No, he's not. That whole character, anyways. Really the big moment is when they finally get to Echo, and he's kind of plugged in all of the Matrix, and he's almost got like the holes in him and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is our, and it's funny or not funny. It's sad that when he does come to, the very first thing he remembers is the Citadel from the counterattack episode. Like that's literally where his memory stopped, and he picks up right here. He's almost, again, like you said, he's been in this stasis where nothing has happened.
3 years later or something, 2 years later.
Yep. And he looks pretty sickly. He's like white skin, super thin, pale, that kind of thing. Right. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good episode. Again, just if for nothing else, the fact that we got Echo back.
Yeah, this one we got some more fun elements to it. And then we moved into On the Wings of Kiridax. I think I'm saying that right. Kiridax are the kind of the bird, bat looking things. And we pick up where they're trying to disconnect Echo. So Tech is trying to find a way to disconnect him while they're trying to avoid the amusingly named Organic Decimator, which is like one of the most ridiculous names that they came up with. It's almost like this, what is it? The remote that Luke trains with, but it's a little bit bigger and it shoots these lightning bolts and it basically turns you into dust, I think it was, right?
Dust.
Right.
Yeah. It's a super overpowered.
Yeah, it's super OP. Yeah, so, but anyway, so of course they find a way to disconnect him. And like you said, he comes around and he's weak. They can't do much with him. So they're trying to get him out. And Tech, of course, records all these sounds. And so in their first confrontation with the Poltex, who are the natives to the planet, he recorded the sound that got the Kiridax all amped up and started I think one of them picked up Anakin or something like that in one of the first episodes. So they were able to call them basically and jump on them. And But of course, the Technical Union is going to respond, and they just deploy all these D-Wing battle droids and these giant tri-droids, and they send them to the Poltech village, and they convince them to help fight, but they're a bit native. They're a bit more primitive. I guess is the right word.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of die in droves, but we're starting to see Echo come around. So Echo is starting to, be his old self a little bit. He'll get a couple shots in here and there, but then we kind of regress a little bit. Tambor starts to panic about his lost prophet, which is kind of a throwback to the more political and money nature of some of these, the prequel challenges.
Yeah, the shallowness of that.
Yeah, that felt a little bit out of place, right? But at the same time, the threat of retaliation by Admiral Trench and the Separatists is very, very real, because he didn't tell them that they lost the algorithm. They lost Echo. Echo is the algorithm at this point. It's in his brain, right? So he's the one feeding the logic to the army, to the Separatist army that's hindering the Republic.
And there were a couple things in here I just want to maybe highlight. I really like that pit, the battle that was kind of in the pit with the Kiradax or not the Kiradax, the Poltex. I guess I can't remember
I think
their names, right? But with them, it was all kind of in this like crater that they were fighting in. Even though again it was real blocky and the animation wasn't even really the animation. I thought it was really entertaining. That whole battle was really cool. They were trying to. I'd really like to see what that would have looked like had they gone in and polished it all up. I thought it would have been kind of an epic type battle.
It was like this inverse plateau almost.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one scene in there where they're in one of the buildings, I think, and they're trying to escape, them being the Bad Batch, and I think it's Tech and maybe Hunter, and they're sealing the doors, and then they have to seal another door. And again, this reminded me of Aliens, where the original Aliens, James Cameron Aliens, where there's a scene in there where they keep sealing the doors with the portable blow torches and all that. It was almost shot for shot the way they did that. So I don't know again who was inspired here, but I got that from it. There's another cool moment in here where there's like Anakin, and he said there's basically two walkers. Anakin decides he's going to take one down, and he tells Rex and Hunter to take down the other one. And we get more of Wrecker's stuff. He likes to throw people. I don't know what this is all about, but he throws Rex up there. He throws Hunter up there, and they kind of tag team one of the walkers while Anakin takes one out for himself. But we get some good moments with Rex to Echo. There's a line in there. He says it's going to be just like old times. And again, we get more of that relationship, more of a sense of loss, or a loss at one point for his friend who's now back. And you can tell that he is emotionally invested in this mission and doing whatever he can to save Echo and, bring him back to, his ranks almost. You kind of get that sense that that's where he's hoping to get him going.
Yeah,
again.
It really goes to show just the extent that they would go for their brothers, and just the type of relationships that the clones have, that they're just not numbers and, cannon fodder.
And I like your comment, another world left in shambles by the Republic. So,
I mean, really, they kind of bail after this. I mean, they left the Poltex just decimated.
Yeah, right. Where do we go from here, guys?
Yeah, they're going to come back and finish the job on these guys. I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty much a given. Yeah. But they're like, peace, guys, we're out.
Yep. All right, take us to unfinished business. This is the last of the 4 episodes. And what happens here?
Right, so they go back to an Axis, and so Echo comes up with a plan that they're basically going to fool him, because Trench doesn't know that they've lost the algorithm, and so he's going to fool them into thinking the Jedi's arrogance, that the Jedi are going to lead just an all-out assault, kind of the last stand type of deal. But really, Bad Batch, Anakin, Rex, and Echo are going to infiltrate Trench's ship, which I believe is above the planet, and they're going to give him fake plans. They're going to shut all the droids down, and it's going to be easy peasy Republic victory, right? So plan is going pretty well. Echo's plugged into the machine, and then Trench finally realizes that he's confused. Why are things going wrong? Why are we not winning? What's wrong with the algorithm? And then he realizes that they're on the ship, and so he disables Echo by sending a pulse, and then he also plans to detonate a bomb on the planet, and he will just take everything out. So they're able to, the team's able to communicate back to Windu and or I guess really just to Windu, right?
Yeah.
Because Echo, Echo's down. He can't really help. So he starts coming around, but Windu's going to go disable the bomb, and Obi-Wan's going to try to get the forces out, as many as they can. So Echo finally starts coming around, and they're able to start the code. But then Echo, I'm getting out a little order here, but anyway, Echo gets disabled, I think, while he's trying to do the bomb code, right? So Trench does the bomb code first. There we go, folks. Sorry about that. So, but he's disabled, and so Anakin has to go in and confront Trench. And this is where we actually see this darker side of Anakin start to come around too, to where he won't tell him the code, and Trench starts taunting him. He's a Jedi. He won't do anything. Well, Trench has got 3 mechanical arms, and so Anakin just severs them right off.
Yeah.
And
yeah, he taunts him. He's like, nobility. He says something like that nobility is his weakness. He tells Anakin that. He's like, I don't have such weakness.
Yeah.
And then he lobs his arm off and like, whoa, where did that come from?
Right. Yep. And so he gets the code, and they, Windu's able to save the day, disable the bomb, and they ended up winning. But then, of course, Trench, because he can't leave well enough alone, he tries to attack Anakin, and then Anakin just runs him right through. So
yeah.
Trench is actually not a bad villain, I think. He's heavily modified, designed after a spider type of creature. I don't know exactly what species he is.
I don't either. Yeah, he just looks like a big tarantula head looking thing.
Right.
With some cybernetic stuff on it.
Right. And so as they're leaving, though, Anakin happened to swipe a detonator because they're just laying around, I guess. And so Crosshair and Wrecker were having this, competition, as you were saying earlier, on the ship, where who could destroy more droids and so on and so forth. And Crosshair's kind of cheating. He's throwing stuff on the hull and disabling multiple at a time.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, he's doing it the crafty way, and Wrecker's kind of doing it the old fashioned way. So Anakin gives him the honor of hitting the switch that blows up Trench's ship, as well as the blast takes out a couple of more as well, because Crosshair was throwing detonators down the corridor the entire time. But it was just, it was there. So let's do it. So anyway, but
Yep.
the team, Rex, Echo, Bad Batch, they all get medals for the victory on Anaxis. And close scene.
Yeah, the way it ended was, I thought, cool. And all of them, I think we can maybe wrap it up here in a little bit. But overall, I think this episode was fitting, I guess, for the ending of the 3 that led up to it. I got where they were going. It all made sense at the very end. We had a scene in there where there was Gold Leader and the Y-Wings.
Right.
The bombers, they show up. That was really exciting, being
I love those Y-Wing designs.
Fans. Oh, anytime you see Y-Wings, it gets me excited.
Oh, especially in this era. It looks so sharp.
And then you mentioned the Wrecker being able to blow stuff up. And the reason why it was so significant was in a couple of these different episodes, there were points where they were telling the Bad Batch or all of the clones that were involved that, hey, this is going to be a stealth mission where we really can't go do anything. And there were moments in there where he was like, oh,
Yeah.
he was mad because he wasn't going to get to you. And that's where Anakin at the very end is like, hey, I got a present for you, Wrecker. And that's when he gives him the detonator. And then he says, this is the happiest day of my life. And that's when he blows everything up. So he's just this hulking, comedic character, I guess. But that was a cool moment. There's a moment there where Mace, you mentioned them, he comes down there and they are like surrounded by 8 billion droids. And he goes into like reading them the, I don't know, whatever the Jedi, he like tries to tell them that they're under arrest, right? I forget what's called there in real world.
It was like the Miranda rights almost.
Miranda rights, thank you. Yeah, he like goes into this like spiel and you're like, Mace, knock it off. How many times have you done this?
Right.
You're just going to go kill them all. You know it. So I thought that was an interesting part. I don't know if that was meant to be that way. I found it funny that he was going into it and telling them that, hey, they need to surrender and blah, blah, blah. And it turned into a big battle at the very end.
Right.
And then I guess the only other thing in here was the very ending. I don't know who says it. I think it's just somewhere in the background. Someone says, let's hear it for the Bad Batch. And then everybody cheers for them.
Right.
So they become heroes at the very end. And maybe more importantly, or I guess, or more significantly, is they are now well known. Before they were this covert group and maybe rumored and no one had ever seen them. Very few people had ever worked with them. Didn't sound like the Jedi were very, aware of them. But now here they are. The spotlight's on them. They had a huge and pivotal role in rescuing Echo and turning the tides on the battle for Anaxis there. So I don't know. Again, this may be just something that was maybe that's the lead for other episodes now that they're available. It could be as simple as the fact that they are now going to be they would have been a part of the Clone Wars series from that point on. We'd see more of them, or maybe there's something else that we may yet to see. So get to see. But any final thoughts around the story arc itself? I guess these 4 episodes.
I thought the arc in general was really good. I liked that we got Echo back because that was tough. When we lost Echo and then we lost Fives later, we had a lot invested in those characters for the most part. So it was nice to see him back and actually see him integrated back with the team. And we'll touch a little bit like what the future looked like for Echo. But I think one of my criticisms of it would be that the writing didn't seem quite as tight to me. It was a little more carefree. Like Wrecker was a little over the top at times. And like you described there at the end, let's hear it for the Bad Batch. It was just a little, we had elements of that during the show, during its history anyway, but some of it was a little too hokey at times. And it just didn't feel as tight. It wasn't bad. It wasn't as tight. And I think the story probably could have been tightened up just a little bit in general. And again, I don't know what the actual process is. I know they record all the audio or all the voice acting, and then they do everything else to it. I don't know if they tweak it after that, if the story's not really working or anything like that. But as it went on, the first episode, we saw a little more of that. But as it went on, it got a little tighter and you got a little more cohesion to it. But overall, I liked seeing some uniqueness to the clones. Yeah, that was always a lot of fun.
That works.
Yeah, I mean, some different design elements and different types of droids. I mean, because we need more different types of droids. So. Yeah. But there were a lot of little comical elements I really liked, like the Amidala thing. I know it's a little chauvinist, but it was a nice throwback, and it was a great kind of laugh out loud moment there of the reaction that Anakin had to Wrecker.
Yeah. I think I really like the Bad Batch. I like the concept. I like the idea. Right. I like the, if you're cranking out thousands, millions of clones, chances are you are going to have a couple in there that are weird and.
Well, they were actively trying for something different too.
Yeah,
right?
no, exactly. Yeah. Why not go ahead and start messing with genetics and seeing what you can get out of this?
Why do you think
it just makes sense? Well, I don't know that
we didn't really get that.
Yeah, and they never really talked about whether they stopped or. I don't think we got a sense one way or the other. Like, I mean, who knows? The Caminos could have actively been doing it. Still, we don't know. And I guess we should mention too that I think Filoni's on record as saying that Echo was to become the 5th member of the Bad Batch team, because he really is a very different character. He's got one arm missing now. He's got like this cybernetic arm. He doesn't look like he did at all. His hair is all gone, and I don't know if that was going to be his look going forward. But again, the Bad Batch they don't look like any of the other clones. They're all very unique. But I think he's is on record as saying that he was going to become the 5th member.
Right.
Of this team. And you've got to think, knowing what, the relationship between Echo and Rex, and Echo and the creators, really, that if he is a member of the Bad Batch, that, I just really get a sense that this group was here to stay, and they were just going to become part of the everyday life of Clone Wars from that point on.
There's some really great, fan art of Echo out there with a new set of armor and things like that are worth just Googling it for Google Images. One more quick question for you. Do you think that 99 was supposed to be something unique like the Bad Batch turned out to be, and that's why he kind of got the defective label?
I think so. I mean, I think maybe he was probably the first one that failed, or I guess. Yeah, maybe the first one that failed, right? And so they didn't know what to do with him, and so he becomes the janitor.
Right.
But that he may have been the prototype for this group, and I think that's why they ended up calling him, calling themselves Clone Force 99, a throwback as a wink and nod to the originator of that type of a clone unit. Yeah. So I think that's probably where they were going there. So I think that may be it. I think we've covered pretty much everything. Looking ahead, we've got episode 246 coming up. This is going to be the Crisis on Utapau. So this will be another 4-part series of episodes that did not make it out, and they're all out there as well. So if you want to watch ahead, you can do so out on YouTube or on the StarWars.com website. We'll take a look at those 4 episodes, kind of talk very similar to what we did here tonight about what was going on, what were they trying to do, and whether or not we would maybe potentially see some of this explored in the new series that's coming later next year. Beyond that, we've got Sons of Dathomir, so we are going to tackle that. And then finally, I think we'll wrap everything up with Rex. And so Rex is probably going to be a 2-part episode. Just because
it could probably be like a 6-month episode.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, it's overwhelming. I don't even know where to start with Rex.
Yeah,
so
if you have ideas,
but we'll get to it.
Shoot us a note.
Yep. Yeah, we are looking for suggestions. Yeah. So if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We'll put our email in there as well. You can send us some fan mail. It's always great to hear the feedback and positive praise and some of the constructive stuff as well. We've got iTunes for reviews. Again, we are on a new new Discord server. So we'll have the new link down there. That'll take you to the Earglue Media Network Discord server. And there you will find both The Basement and this show, the Cantina Cast, and a couple of other shows that are soon to come. And you can join us there anytime you'd like. What else am I forgetting here?
That's about it.
Patreon. Patreon, TeePublic. Yeah. There's options there too. If you want to show more support for the show, you can do so.
Always lots of good sales. Always lots of good sales over at TeePublic these days too. So
yeah, 30% off.
Yeah, 30% off, like all the time.
Yeah, it's always 30% off. All right. Any final thoughts before we close this one out?
That's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.